they're ambitious, and they will. And they built up one of the biggest economic nations that we have in the free world, our 8th largest trading partner. Why do I tell you all of that? It's because this is what I vision that all of us are going to do right here now. You've already got the seeds. We'll be bringing in people to let you know what the next steps are going to be. But I want you to remember today, because I sincerely believe that this will be the first day, an historic day, for the future of this great village. I just want to say that before I turn it over to you, and David and his friend Cassidy would get a better understanding of what you've done and to help us to make to that next level. Before I quit, let me thank each and every one of you for the kids that are not here, for the future of Harlem. You are that future. If I can better prepare you, then we've got to have a longer life, a better life, and it's going to be good for our city and our country. So thank you for forming this group. Let me turn it over to you.
Big hand for Congressman Rangel. Wow. 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 Very inspirational. Unbelievable. We're very blessed to have him here. We have the great Inez Dickens, who's also here. She's a great supporter. Gail Brewer is over here.
She's going to be the borough president. Please stand up.
There she is.
She knows I'm next street, love Harlem, and I think that she knows that we're going to be the heartbeat for this whole damn borough. Right?
So we want to just quickly...
Where's Inez?
She's right there.
Inez Dickens, please stand. Hopefully our next speaker of the City Council.
Here we go. Here we go.
All right.
Big supporter of Silicon Harlem. We just want to quickly say, from our perspective, Silicon Harlem's major objective is to turn and transform Harlem into a tech and innovation hub. And with all of your help, with the Congressman's help, with everyone's help, we feel that we're on the right track. We've got a lot of people that are behind us. We have a whole host committee of people that are with Silicon Harlem, and we're counting on all of you to be very active with this organization and helping us reach that objective. Part of that objective is to get infrastructure put in place that is carrying a gigabit speed. That's one of the things that we talked about the Congressman back in the summer. We believe that Harlem should not be the last community to get a gigabit speed infrastructure. We want Harlem to be the first in New York City to have a full-blown gigabit infrastructure throughout the community. That's important. That is important. That makes you competitive internationally. Whatever small business, mid-sized business, large business that you have, to have a gigabit speed infrastructure will definitely put you in a competitive advantage. So all of that to say, we are very thankful for all the support, thankful that you're here. We've got, where's Bruce at? Bruce, why don't you add a few comments and then we can get into it.
This is a historic night in Harlem, and there's many here who know how long it's taken to get to this point, such as Gail Brewer, who's been working assiduously, as well as the Congressman since the 90s, prior to the internet, with an idea that this would be the place where technology could come together, people could come together and make this a place where we would basically move into the future together. We're going to change our normal format where normally we kind of recognize people and do our talks, because we have a very exciting discussion here that we'd like to get into. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it back to Clayton. And thank you so much all for being here.
All right. So with that, we have another presentation following this Tech Talk with a group called GoX. GoX is putting Wi-Fi all the way down the 125th Street corridor. And for those of you who own businesses along 125th Street, they're offering a free internal Wi-Fi for your space. So if you want to start your own internet cafe or some other type of internet offering, GoX will be able to provide that for you. So they're going to make a presentation right after we talk with the Congressman and David Eun. So, and this is the great Walter Edwards, by the way. Walter is the man who put this building together. So I hope you guys are enjoying Mist. It's a beautiful facility in Harlem. So we're going to, Bruce, you want to take a seat over here? And
say
David-
how high-tech it is. The seats that you're sitting in, they collapse and go into the wall when we're having dinner here at this very same place. So
That's right. Completely modular. So if you're planning an event, make sure you consider Mist.
all these seats go into the wall.
I wanted to just quickly thank Hannah Kim, who is here, who works on Congressman Rangel's team. She was very instrumental in pulling this together as well. So thanks, Hannah. So we're going to allow David Eun to say a few opening remarks and really kind of clue us in about the innovation centers that he's been, really on the forefront around the country. So, David?
David, before, I wish you tell them how you got started and the different levels that you moved to. I don't think this is working. David, is this good? I don't need it. Listen, there comes times in all of our lives when you meet someone that modesty really doesn't count. Because you really will not even know how to ask an intelligent question unless you know where did you come from, what have you done, what are you doing, and what can you do to help me. This is a very, very exciting person, and I cannot thank you enough for the agreement we made in Seoul, Korea, when you said that you'd be here for our group, and I think we ought to give a big hand, because a promise made, a promise kept.
I'll just start with a few quick words. Well, first I should start by thanking you all for having me. I had the pleasure of meeting Congressman Rangel. It was only about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, not that long ago. And I'm based here in New York. I've lived here in New York for 14 years. I grew up in Virginia, Southern Virginia actually. Had a Southern accent until college. And I happened to be in Korea because I travel there quite a bit and have an office in Silicon Valley. And happened to be in Korea at the same time the congressman was visiting, and they thought, oh, would you be interested in meeting the congressman, because we're going to have lunch. And when I was in college, I studied government, and my particular focus was American government. And in fact, I spent a lot of my time studying the Congress, because I thought at one point I might try to go work on the Hill, and in fact that's the reason why I went to law school. So anyone who is at all familiar with modern American congressional history and what's been happening there you have to understand and appreciate the impact and the role that Congressman Rangel has played. So for me it was like, whoa, yeah, of course I'd drop everything. I'd be thrilled to have lunch. And what was supposed to, I think, be 45 minutes, an hour, turned into 2 hours. And very early on, Congressman Rangel said, I'm involved with this organization. I'm a big supporter. I really believe in it. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to come by and do anything, come by. And we could explore ways that you could support what we're trying to do. And so here I am. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, David.
Maybe one thing I could do is, the congressman made reference to this, because it's something that I shared at the lunch that I learned. I joined Samsung about 2 years ago in January. And for those of you who don't know, I think a lot of people are familiar with our products, but not as much with our company. But right now Samsung is #1 in mobile and #1 in TVs. And so Samsung Electronics is one of 28 businesses in the Samsung group, right? So under the Did You Knows. Did you know that Samsung Construction built one of the Petronas Towers in the Burj Dubai? I didn't even know they had a construction business, right? So it was a big educational process for me. Electronics is the largest business within Samsung. And I said #1 in each. This is the 7th year Samsung's been #1 in TVs. We sell 2 TVs a second. And in mobile, we're now the largest by market share, revenue, profits, etc. So the last flagship device we sold was the S4. We sold 10 million units that first month. And we're shipping over 1 million mobile devices a day. This is 24/7 every day, right? So there's a lot of volume and scale in the company. Last year, our revenues increased by $45 billion over the previous year, off a base of $142 billion. So it's a pretty big company. We're a scrappy startup. But what was interesting for me, my parents immigrated to this country as students in the early 60s, because the only way you could actually immigrate to the country from Asia was if you were a student. In fact, for those of you familiar with this part of American history, the only time we've actually excluded a race from immigrating to the U.S. has actually been against Asians. And the only way you could slip in was through a student visa. Back then, things have changed a little bit later. So I grew up in Virginia, as I said, and I didn't grow up really with much of a Korean or Asian American community. And when I got to Samsung, one of the things that we learned about was modern Korean history, and this is what the Congressman referred to. In 1960, Korea was the second poorest country on the planet. It had been ravaged by a devastating civil war, right? The Korean War, which Congressman Rangel is a veteran of. And it's a country with thousands of years of history and culture, and it had literally been turned into rubble. And millions and millions of people had died. And up until the early 70s, North Korea had twice the GDP of South Korea. So think about that, right? So it's only up until the mid-70s where the country began to really get on its own footing. And if you look at the country itself, there's no real natural resources, South Korea. It's not necessarily in the best location geopolitically, given the interesting relationship it has with the North and neighbors all around. It has thousands of years of history of being invaded by foreigners, by different countries. And it's a very small country. South Korea is about 40 million people. So really, you think to yourself, what happened? And at the end of the day, they just made goals for themselves and said, we've got to get out of this situation we're in. We're going to set goals. We know where the future's headed. It's going to be making big bets, and a lot of the big bets were on technology and industry. And I think now Korea is number 11 world economy, number 8 trading partner, as you said, Congressman. So it's fascinating for me to see as an American with great admiration and respect for how a small country has been able to evolve like it has. And it's been also interesting to work in a company that obviously is headquartered there, but is truly a global company. And maybe I'll just end it with this, but we sold the Galaxy S4 in over 200 countries and with over 350 carriers, partners around the world. So it's truly a global company. And what I think is interesting about technology, and hopefully I think a lot of what you all talk about is, let's take it back and study what's going on. Approximately 40% of the world's population has some form of internet access. Right? There's 6 billion people on the planet. 4.8 own a mobile phone. Right? There are more mobile phones today in our world than there are toothbrushes. True. Right? And when you look at these trends, mobile, of course, is exploding. There's more traffic today just on mobile devices as there was on the entire internet in the year 2000. Right? And the growth today within mobile is coming within content type, within video, but obviously lots of different services. But it truly is global, right? So, poll or quiz. Out of these 3 regions, where is there the greatest growth, right? Latin America, Asia, Pacific, Middle East, Africa. It's Middle East, Africa, right? Now, all those 3 regions are growing over 70% a year. Right? So this is truly a huge global phenomenon. And, before, to answer the Congressman's question, before joining Samsung, I was at AOL, and I was president of AOL Media and Studios. Before that, I worked at Google, and I was Google's content czar. I focused a lot on content. And then I started in media and digital media many years ago. I worked at Time Warner when Dick Parsons was the CEO, and years before that at NBC. So this global village that we kept on referring to, that would be created when the internet would become more popular, is actually happening. I mean, technically, conceptually, we have the ability now for one person to connect and speak to, like, literally billions of other people. And in fact, if you follow the latest Facebook stats, they have, I think, 1.2 billion, something like that, 1.2 billion users, and something like 550 million users use Facebook on a daily basis, which is phenomenal. So I'll stop there to say, and then you can get into your questions, but I joined the company, and I'm really getting an interesting view of what is happening on a global scale, and it's really happening. And so I think it's hugely exciting for anyone, no matter where you live, no matter where you're from, but particularly in the US, particularly if you speak English, for us to do some very interesting things. And it's still, frankly, it's still very early days.
Yeah.
We're just getting off the ground.
Yeah. I agree.
So, given your background, David, and the fact that you had been at Google, what attracted you to Samsung? You could have gone, I'm certain, to a lot of places, but what attracted you to Samsung?
What attracted me to Samsung was that I just thought it would be a really interesting place to have great box seats for what was going to happen in the arena, and it turns out to be true. But there's just the space that Samsung is in, the spaces are so dynamic. And as a consumer, I could appreciate a lot of that, you know, what's going on in video and internet and mobile and how all that's all coming together. So I just thought it'd be an interesting place to watch and learn and do some interesting things and, you know, meet some interesting people along the way.
So, talk a little bit about the Open Innovation Centers. What was the sort of the birth of that? What is it looking to achieve? Can we have one here in Harlem?
So Samsung's history is in manufacturing world-class hardware. And I think it's no secret that you have to get hardware and software right. And I always talk about how you have to have a thoughtful integration of the two. So I launched an organization in January called the Open Innovation Center. And as the name suggests, we are focused on innovation in software and services. So the things that would run on a phone, the things that would run on a connected TV. And we are exclusively focused on startups. So I have a lot of colleagues. We have, by the way, 270,000 employees around the world. My group is focused exclusively on startups. So it breaks into 4 very distinct things, which may be of interest to folks in the audience. We have an investments group, so we invest in startups. We invest from seed round all the way to B, typically. We have a partnerships group, so we're always on the lookout, meeting interesting companies that might be great partners for us on our devices. We also have an acquisitions group, so this is a new group that we just formed, and we did our first acquisition of a New York-based company, actually, called Boxy, in the TV space. And then lastly, we have these accelerators, one in New York, actually, on 26th and 6th, and one in Palo Alto. And there we are incubating our own startups. So we have created our own accelerator, but we are working with, sponsoring, collaborating with a number of different incubators and accelerators around the country. So as I told the Congressman, I think we'd be very interested to explore different ways that we could work with the startups and people here on all those dimensions, across all the different groups that I just mentioned.
Well, talking about that, typically what do you look for in a partner, and is there rules around investment? I mean, how much do you typically invest?
So there are different types of partners in each of those groups. So for the investments group, we will invest anywhere from $500,000 to $3 million, but I think we make smaller seed investments of a few $100,000. Typically we look for serial entrepreneurs who are building services that would complement our devices really well. But we're very open, and we're investing in all sorts of different spaces: productivity and communications, enterprise, healthcare related, education related, etc. So, because so much can be done on a phone or a tablet, right, or on connected TVs more and more, we're very open.
Bruce?
Yeah, I have a question for David. Recently at the Columbia Institute for Teleinformation, they had their latest State of the Telecom event on the future of TV. Could you talk a little bit about how Samsung envisions the future of TV? And one of the things they talked about there was the idea of TV everywhere, and not simply that someone would have 2 or 3 devices, but you would have up to potentially 10 devices in your home, and people being online in very different ways doing different things.
So, I think there is a distinction made between TV and video, and I think that's blurring together, right? So, the thing that you refer to as your TV today is capable of creating lots of different experiences for you. It may be a linear TV channel brought to you by your cable company or your satellite TV company, but increasingly these TVs are connected to the internet. So our smart TVs, once you take it out of the box, you register it just like you would a smartphone, and it will sniff out Wi-Fi and will connect to the internet. And what that means is you can download apps and have experiences. You can enjoy Netflix, for example, on your TV. So you're watching video on what used to be just your TV. So it's not necessarily a broadcast signal, right? And I think increasingly, we've been thinking about apps and different services on our TVs, on our smart TVs for a while now. We were the first with an app store back in 2008. This is evolving quite a bit, and our smartphones and our tablets and everything are now becoming increasingly easier to connect with our TVs, or our videos, or displays, I should say. So you could, if you're watching a video or photos, you can just put it right on your display, on your wall. And so what I think the TV is evolving into is a smart display, capable of displaying TV or movies from a DVD, remember those? Or getting streamed from a service, or just from your own phone. Here I am with the Congressman, it's a short little video. I can put that up and enjoy it on my TV in my living room later on this evening. So I think that experience is evolving. There's a lot of companies, startups in this space, really thinking about how might you create complementary experiences on tablets or your smartphone or even on the TV itself. But hugely exciting, right? And I think you're seeing the evolution in experience and product, but you're not even seeing close to different business models being developed. And I think the advertising agencies and the media buyers and folks in that part of the ecosystem are watching very carefully, right? Because just in the TV industry alone in the U.S., it's a plus $80 billion business, right? And that business exists to get in front of where the eyeballs are. And we know that the eyeballs are going lots of different places and consuming content in different ways. So there's a lot of different, like seismic shifts that are about to take place. Mm-hmm. And whenever that happens, there's always opportunity for smart people.
One of the main things we talk about here in the United States, one, because we know we have so many young people who are digital natives, and especially here in Harlem, our young people consume a tremendous amount of content on mobile devices. What is your idea of the role that STEM education can play, as what we're doing is building on the fact that all these young people are media literate and they're digerati?
So crucial, and Congressman and I spoke about that at our lunch. What's amazing, there was some ridiculous statistic I just read, something like 27% of kids under the age of 3 know how to use a tablet or something like that, right? And I think if those of you who have relatives or children of your own, or see small children, they just kind of like, it's almost intuitive for them, right? This use of technology. And so on some level, children being exposed to this. And for me, I think there's a huge opportunity in through STEM and other types of curricula, to really learn not just about how to consume the content, and by content I don't mean just video content, but just all the services, but how to create it, how to be a part of it. And I think that is a huge opportunity. And again, it's not just about opportunities here, but it's a global phenomenon, right? And so, in fact, it's a great example. I just came from a product review in our accelerator where we had some of our startups giving an update, and one of my most of them have actually virtual team members who work from different places. But one of the startups had 3 different people. One was in Phoenix, and one who just started 2 weeks ago is from the Ukraine. And this guy was looking for a specific type of developer, and he posted it on one of these open job sites. And this person from the Ukraine answered it. And then they gave him a little bit of a test, and he gave some output, and it was really good. And so now, I'm trying to think this through, and I've never had, there's been virtual teams that I've seen, but this is seamless for this founder of this one particular company, and he's used to doing this. And so, on one hand, you could look at, and I think the traditional people would hear that, get scared, and say, hey, that could have been an American job, right? And I totally get that. But on the other hand, there's an opportunity for Americans to work across anywhere, right? And maybe the next job opportunity, maybe there's going to be a huge explosion of opportunity, working in Kenya, right? 2 decades from now. Do I actually have to live in Kenya? Or could I work on 3 different products, one in the Ukraine, one in Singapore, and one in Silicon Valley, and live in Akron, Ohio? All that is possible for certain types of jobs. So for me, it's evolving so quickly, I'm still amazed. But it all comes down to, how are we exposing and training people so that they're capable of doing this, right? A lot of it's going to happen naturally, just because kids, they're texting each other all the time, and they're sharing YouTube videos and whatnot, and that would take an hour for me to try to teach my parents how to do that, frankly, and they would get it. But if, a 6-year-old could do that almost intuitively. But beyond that, what kind of education are we giving them so that they can add on these skills? And I don't know if we want to get into that. Congressman knows much more about that than I, but I think as a company, we'd be happy recipients of that kind of talent, because right now, there's no shortage of demand for this kind of talent. It's actually a huge shortage of supply, right? And there are literally jobs that are going unfilled for months and months and months. And in fact, people are packing it in. They're not releasing certain features. They're not taking their product in certain directions, simply because they cannot find this kind of talent.
Congressman?
It just seems to me that our country is out of focus in terms of the future of America, national security, economic competition. The whole idea that we can lock up 2 million people with minds and bodies that can be productive, and at the same time, you talk about a child being able to want to learn, and we have schools that almost create an atmosphere that they don't want to learn. And when you see countries like China with over 1 billion people, and they recognize that these people can be trained, as far as America is concerned, I don't see how the hell we can survive on the course that we are on today. It just doesn't add up. Having said that, when we have minds like are in this room tonight, recognizing that this thinking seems to be far beyond the political arena, where what you said, David, is that where America should be looking for these minds just for economic reasons, to be a competitive nation, to be so proud of what we can produce as a country. And yet, the school system, for all practical purposes, are not making that need. Now, we do pretty good in higher education, since so many people would come here for that. But it's got to start somewhere. I know that the charter schools are controversial. I know that. But their success has been based on a different idea and different sources of resources. And at the end of the day, they turn out a product. As some would say, at the expense of the traditional public school. Now, we have this talent in this room. And as you pointed out, the generation ahead of it may not have the slightest idea of why these people are meeting here today. And the country certainly hasn't provided any incentive the same way that the rollout for the Affordable Care Act broke down on for very technical reasons. Somehow there hasn't been a communication that what they're talking about here tonight in Silicon Harlem, if this could burst out in different places all over the country, we'll be way ahead. Now, they have the idea here, and we know that it takes more than just will and wanting to do. And what I'm doing is taking advantage of the reputation of a wonderful community that everyone knows that we're here. And we're not here just to sing and dance and provide food. We're here. Because we are just so well known, and like Korea, we have come up out of the damn ashes in terms of what we know from our parents and our grandparents. As Langston Hughes said, life ain't been no crystal stair for nobody in this room. Having said that, we still have the romance of the Renaissance era that I was just mentioning, where great minds just came to Harlem. Some of them didn't know where to go. They had no place to stay. They just stayed in the lobby. They just talked with each other. And out of these conversations, they actually became more important and more thinking people. Now we have that here, David, and we have people that want just a little direction. What can we do? I think that Gail, is she still?
I'm here.
I think that, I hate to believe that this could be, in this day and age, a pilot project. But with all the money that we're investing in locking up people, it seemed to me that opening up people's minds could be something that no one could walk away from. And that is because each one of the people that are here bring a sense of credibility that goes beyond just hoping that we can do better. Each person here knows that they don't need a charter school to educate your kids as to what they're going to have to do to compete.
That's right.
Our biggest job in Harlem and the Harlems around this country is educating parents to know what they should be telling their kids. And sometimes, well, it hasn't worked, and you know where that ends up. But if we start off with people that already know, that can talk with educators and saying what you know you can produce. And at the end of the day, and David said it, there has to be a job there. We can have people to come and tell you what they would like to have. And we can have people to make certain that that is what is being produced. So that, yes, you can study the arts and the culture and all of those things, but when you get out there, you got something to sell to someone that is saying they're thirsty for more talent because this picture is going at a rapid speed. I don't know where we go from here, and it's a little too ambitious, Gail and Inez, to talk about having our own high-tech school. because we have the universities here. We have the state university system. We have the city university system. We have Columbia here. We have NYU here. And believe me, David, they're getting billions of dollars and we're not even included in it. I mean, they are now planning right here in my congressional district for billions of dollars to be invested in STEM, which exclude us. So if we can actually find out, since we don't have the money to invest, but we do have the knowledge and we're a step up on so many other communities, especially, I don't want to say rural communities because the Tea Party thinks I'm calling them names, but they got the Confederate, and we should have the future in terms of where the country is not, where the country should be going, not where they hope it would stay. And we got the credentials, I think, in this room to do it. But we need a master planner to say, this is what we think if you could produce this, no matter how high the standard would be, if you could produce this, we have experience that this would be the end product. This is what would be ready for the next level. And I don't know where to take it from here, but I certainly would like to listen to the minds that are in this room, because this is an opportunity to dream with a person that's all he's been doing all of his life, except his dreams have become reality. But there are things that he would be talking about last year that just didn't exist, or the year before that, or the year before that. And so I would like to see what would come out of this would be a place where kids and adults and educators would say a seed was planted in Harlem in order to make certain that high tech became a part of our lives, that it would improve our ability to provide the service, but at the same time that the country would recognize that they need us and they will need our children and our grandchildren even more. We can do it. In the Army, they took a dumb guy like me who dropped out of high school, and they said they needed somebody to kill people, you know, and to operate 18 155 millimeter howitzers with 75-pound projectiles to go 7 miles to kill people I didn't even know who they were or why they were there. And I learned how to do it. And so, we can learn how to do anything because every one of you got a jump start. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You got a jump start. Your everyday conversation with people on the block, someone don't know what the hell you're talking about. But there's so much more that we have to learn. And I don't know how you ever, when you put this much confidence in being together, you have to share with us up here, what is that dream and how can we help to make it a reality? Because the product that you're trying to produce is one that is so sorely needed. And I don't think Gail and Inez and I have a hard time when we see the ridiculous things that we're wasting money on and the amount of money that we're pouring into the so-called criminal justice system, and the fact that the whole world knows that this is what the world is going to look like faster than most of us can expect. That if we can produce a product that just makes sense based on the talents that you already have and reduce that to a program, I'm 83, but I could spend the rest of my life pushing that program. And I tell you one thing, that our institutions of higher learning, they feel so damn guilty to be in a community where people from all over the world are trying to get advanced degrees, and they haven't made our public schools work here where they are.
Exactly.
You know, it just doesn't make sense. And so I need a little direction because this, we couldn't purchase, we couldn't buy the professional advice that David and Cassidy are bringing here. But they enjoy this for themselves, for their company, and for their country. I cannot think of anything that's more patriotic or more involved in national security than to get our minds caught up with our country's ambitions and stop talking about killing it, but talking about building and talking about providing service. So it seems to me that right in this room, we don't need anybody preaching and converting all of you. The reason you're here tonight is to take it to another level. And I might even add that I think Bill de Blasio, our new mayor, and he will be, is the type of person that we can get in on the ground floor. We can get in there because, one, we got the political investment, but you put together something that you got me hooked on. Young people, young ideas, planning for the future, respecting the past. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I think about you and how I can help wherever I go. And so when I said that remember tonight, it didn't mean we got to hit the jackpot at all tonight. But maybe we can start drawing up that plan, our vision, and piece by piece put it all together. We got a great opportunity. And to say something kind about the Republican Party, I really think they're on their deathbed. I really think they're on a suicide mission. But the rich and the powerful see that they're about to destroy the economy of our country because they don't think about what they're doing because they're motivated by hate and emotion.
That's right.
Now, Wall Street learned this. They don't like entitlement, they don't like poor people and whatnot, but they don't like to see the country's fiscal integrity go down to 2. And so if you have an insane person on your team, that person has to be contained. And it was done to prevent a disaster from happening internationally. Somewhere along the line, whether it's immigration, whether it's investment in infrastructure, or whether it's science and technology, somebody, somewhere, that's got more invested in this country than you and I have, are going to talk to these crazy people and tell them that if you want a party at all of survival, the Civil War is over.
Yeah, it ended.
And that brown and yellow and black folks are in this country. It's no longer a European country. And that we're going to have to think about how we can improve. Somewhere they got to wake up and find this message. They have to. Because they're batting their heads against a brick wall. I don't want to... It is so... I can't even explain. The Affordable Care Act, I have never seen a bill that's been so locked in. I don't remember the last piece of legislation that the Supreme Court reviewed. You know, I mean, they do better going after eliminating Social Security. You know, or wiping out the churches and the synagogues. It's insane. And they're prepared to have our country go down the drain. So I know that's a sick way to think positive. But I know one thing. There's no color on science and technology. There's no color on the website. It doesn't come from a whole bunch of liberals in the North. And it's something that they're going to have to learn to live with no matter where they come from. And if we got a product and they're dying, they don't give a damn what kind of blood you have. All they want to do is to be a part of the growth of this country, as sick as they may be. I think we are on the verge of coming up with something that's brand new. We've been struggling for better schools ever since I've been a kid. But this is a different level that we're talking about. We're going into a different era.
Yes.
This is just like selling automobiles to someone that all they've done is follow horses around all their life, and they don't know what the hell you're talking about. How you package this, I don't know. But I know one thing, we're not going to waste our time. We've got to come up with something. And I yield back to all of you as to where do you think our first start should be. We need a plan. We need a program. And as long as I'm working on the Ways and Means Committee on taxes, I'm certain that all our international friends would listen to me if I have something positive to say about investing in the country.
Could I just add one
Yeah,
quick
we're going to let you guys ask some questions, but I want David to respond. So,
I just want to add one thing, two observations. One is New York City. One of the questions I often get is, well, Silicon Valley we get, but why did you create an accelerator in New York City? And after finance, technology is actually the largest source of jobs in New York City. A lot of people don't know that. And New York now is the second largest source of venture capital in the country. In fact, it's the only location, the only geography that had net growth from 2007 through 2011. I was just looking at my notes earlier. So it's on an upward swing. So you have these forces. You have the amazing world-class institutions of higher education. You have the capitals of finance and increasing technology and fashion and advertising and media all here. And so it could be, it should be a fantastic place to drive innovation for the future. That's one thing. And so as people who are, as New Yorkers, that's something that we should all keep in mind and understand and internalize so we can create more momentum. That's one thing. The second thing I just quickly wanted to comment on, and Congressman's remarks really made me think about this, is one of the things that I find most amazing about, now this is the private sector, companies that do really well, and I see this with Samsung, which has been really impressive to me, but I saw it at Google as well, is that they have huge, big goals, right? And somewhere along the way, people started putting constraints on what their company or they themselves were capable of doing. And I think this is true for Korea as well. I see Korea now really thinking, how can we be more of a center of innovation and not just industry? And so this idea of setting big goals first and foremost is so important because, you know, after that you got to get the plan and put that in place. But this idea of thinking big it's actually very difficult to do because we're always checking ourselves. Oh, that won't work, and we're always like, you know, so we don't put stuff out there. But some part of me is beginning to appreciate this idea of thinking really big. And when you meet some of these iconic entrepreneurs, you know, the people who have created what we call these unicorn companies, these startups that become billion-dollar companies, to a person, the one thing that I would say they share in common is that they all think big. They all think big. So they're, for me as an observer and as frankly as a citizen of the city, you know, I think that we have to think big, and we can't constrain ourselves about what is or isn't possible. And after thinking big, we can let certain realities check us and the plans that we create. But you got to start by thinking big. And I will tell you, as spending just a little bit of time with people who have built big, new, innovative things, they think big.
well, you're with Silicon Harlem anyway, we definitely are in that zone where we're trying to think big. We believe that if we do what we're setting out to do, transforming Harlem, it will, in fact, eliminate poverty. It will, in fact, decrease crime. You see that in Silicon Valley and other areas where technology is leading the way in the business sector. All of those factors come down, and we are thinking on that level as well. By the way, that watch you're wearing.
I watch it.
I'm just taking photos of everyone. You're not the only ones who can take photos of me. I can take photos of you.
All right, I got to get one of those. We have a question back there, Bruce.
Say your name, please, and your affiliation.
I'm Bice. My name is Bice Wilson. I'm the principal of Studio Bice. We're a planning, architecture, and placemaking firm. And I had the honor of knowing Bruce and Clayton for quite a long time, and I don't know how many of you know the vision behind Silicon Harlem and how old it is, because these gentlemen have been holding the vision of drawing the infrastructure that Harlem needs to Harlem for decades. And they have kept the faith, and they have done the work, and they have stayed at it. These two gentlemen were co-conveners with me of a process called Designing the Intelligent Public Way. And if you Google it, you can see the collaboration site where that conversation happened about how do we design the broadband infrastructure so that it goes where it needs to go to benefit the people in our communities, because it's not being designed. We spent years in colloquia with all sorts of people from Google and academia and all sorts of stuff, and I can give you in 7 words the upshot of our study about the power of broadband in economic and community development. 7 words. Where it's not, you can't. Where it's not, you can't. And I would like to ask your permission, Bruce and Clayton, to turn those words around about Silicon Harlem and say, when it's here, we can. Now, David, I want to offer you a story I heard from a futurist at the American Institute of Architects conference in 1996 about the redevelopment of North Korea. When the American consultant showed up there to tell them how to redevelop themselves, he basically said, you know, you don't have anything, and you can't really be anything, and you're going to have a tough life. And they asked him, he said in the speech, he said, well, they asked him, well, what's a new industry? What would be a good industry? Well, he said, well, technology, but you can't do that. You don't have anyone who knows anything about it. He said, well, that's not true. We'll send a couple of 1,000 people off to school. And he did something. Basically, what the futurist said is that the Korean approach to future was, tell me where I need to go, and I'll figure out the resources I need to have to get there, rather than look at the resources I have and tell myself I can't get there. So, Silicon Harlem can pull those resources together to make the vision that Congressman and you and Bruce and Clayton have been talking about, and when it's here, we can.
Very good. Thank you, Vice. Thank you very much, Vice.
But we concentrate on the next step.
Please say your name.
Good evening. My name is Lucius Conway. I'm with Recovery Coaching Services of New York. We provide assistance, guidance, and mentoring to people who have addictive disorders regain control of their lives. And in terms of the next step, one of the things that the pan-recovery movement in America and in the world builds on self-directed, wellness-driven recovery from a myriad of addiction and addictive issues. When I thought of Silicon Harlem, and I think of the technology and high tech, a lot of times the science of it devastates, I think, not only me, but a lot of people, and they don't get it. It's not just hardware, it's software, and it begins with ideas. I knew a teacher in Detroit who talked about public education being the killer of the dream. Children vision and imagine outside the box. They think big naturally. We kill that over time. I believe the beginning of this is creating a space where we reignite it. Because when I come here, I think of Mark Zuckerberg, I think of big ideas, and I believe that even the hardware follows the idea. So what we need is a place where people come together and that is nurtured in them to create ideas. I can guarantee you kids have ideas about apps and everything else. And if we created a space where we could encourage that kind of thing and put them together with the people who could put the hardware together, you'd have exactly what you're looking for.
Thank you very much.
One of the things I didn't mention when I was asked the question about STEM is that Samsung in the U.S. is also very focused in terms of our philanthropic efforts on children and education. So I think just a little shout out for my own company. I think that there's an opportunity to explore how we might actually take the focus we already have on educating children and figuring out ways to collaborate. I mean, that's not limited to that, but that could be one really interesting thing to explore.
I thought you never said it. Actually, if what we can do is be the mentors, if we can convince the politicians and the educators that we got a sponsor and we can convince ourselves at the end of the day that we have turned out productive kids that on their own they can do it. It would seem to me our foot in the door would be these kids that have no hope for the future. And I don't want to get involved in charter and traditional, and I don't want Gail to get involved, but we're talking about a pilot project. We're talking about a pilot project, and it seems to me the best way we can hone our skills and let the whole world know it is to use the kids as the ears to the intellect that you already accumulated. And out of that, it seems to me that job opportunities, based on the largeness of the ability to imagine this being a city, a community rather, of the future, that there's opportunities for everybody. But I really think that nobody can possibly argue our fight for kids to be able to understand what we're talking about as fast as we can. I don't see any challenge there, especially if we can just tell people what international organizations are willing to do. I think we could go down Wall Street and tell them that we got the product. All we have to do is to develop it.
Hi, my name is Martina Abrahams. I'm here for myself, but I'm also one of the leads for the Black Googler Network here in New York. And you touched on this a little just for now, but I know that filling the talent pipeline, there's a lack of diversity and a lack of supply, like you mentioned. And I know it's an industry-wide problem, so I just wanted to know some of the things that Samsung is doing to build the talent pipeline.
I would say that the constraint on skilled, technologically savvy workers is so acute that I would say there's not even much fine tuning. Do you know what I mean? It's not that there aren't enough African American women, technologists or developers, and there aren't, but there's just not, period, enough. And so I think it's impossible for one company really to figure out the solution to that, and in fact it's hard for even an industry to do it. It's so many different things. It's education, it's mentoring, it's different programs, it's increasing awareness, it's encouraging, and because you're with the Women's Network, it's encouraging women from very early on, girls when they're in schools, right, not to shy away from math and sciences, right? Not to shy away from leadership opportunities. It's women who are professionals, and Sheryl Sandberg's a very good friend, to lean in. And there are different types of leaning in, right? But with respect to the kind of things that we do all the things that you would think. We have recruiters, we try to reach out to different programs, go to different conferences. I have a particular sensitivity, given my own background, about how important it is to have a diverse workforce, and not just culturally and race and ethnicity, but also gender, especially in technology. In fact, in our product review today, I kind of noticed again, so we have a general manager in New York and general manager in Silicon Valley who just started, and they're both women. It's probably more the exception than what you'd expect. But so, to answer your question, I mean, we do sort of the typical big company things. But I also think, and this might be me, just David Eun, but because Samsung is global, right, we employ, more than half of our workforce is actually not based in Korea, even though a lot of our operations are there. I think somehow on one level, because we're a global company,